AITA for calling out a secretary and threatening to report her to her manager after she revealed health information. I got a needle stick injury at work. I'm a healthcare worker, and my family doctor filled out a lab requisition for baseline blood work to be done. One of the tests is HIV. I went to an external lab to get it done because my family MD office is closed. It's a typical diagnostics lab. In the waiting area there are 5 other people sitting down. I go to the secretary and hand her the rec forms. She takes them, checks me in, and I sit down. After 10 minutes she calls me back calling out my first name and says, "Mom, there's an issue with the HIV test form." Everybody in the waiting area heard and gave me looks. I go up to her, very angry. I told her you cannot just announce people's personal health information like that. She says, "Oh, it's okay, you are getting tested just because of a workplace injury." I told her that's fine, but other people don't know that. What if I had to get tested for HIV for a more personal reason? What if somebody who knew me was in the waiting area and heard I was getting tested? She apologized, but I told her I will be calling her manager and informing them of the incident. She rolled her eyes and said, "Go ahead." In a mocking tone. I told my husband what happened and he said maybe I should cut her some slack. But I told him, revealing personal health information is a huge violation. It's something that was drilled into me as a healthcare worker. I am appalled that the secretary was so blasé about it. I don't care if she gets reprimanded or loses her job. This is not something to mess around with. AITA? NTA. What she did is a huge privacy violation and is illegal almost everywhere. This can wreck people's lives. The fact she clearly didn't care shows she does this sort of thing all the time. You would be TA if you didn't report her. Lamau, no. You are NTA. First, she violates both the rules, and your privacy by talking about your personal medical info in a setting with people around. Secondly, she has the gall to start being disrespectful to you afterwards. I think it was an automatic reaction on her part. She looked extremely nervous. I talked to my friend who is a manager at a clinic and he said he would 100% fire the secretary if he was her manager. So I think her job is gone, and I can't help but feel responsible if that actually happened. NTA. Her behavior was wildly unprofessional, not to mention illegal under HIPAA. I think her inability to understand how serious her error was and apologize means she should seek employment in another field, preferably one where she can't ruin people's lives or reputations. NTA. I'm admin staff in a healthcare setting and we know better than that. Don't just threaten, actually call the manager, and if they don't do anything escalate until someone does. It's weekend so lab supervisor is gone. I am on hold with the lab company customer services. AITA for changing my son's school so he wouldn't have to shoulder the weight of helping his stepbrother, X, 40 meters, and I, 31F, have a son who is 11. X cheated on me with his current wife 3 years ago. X's wife has a son, Daniel, who is the same age as my son. The first 2 years were rough. Daniel's home was ripped apart too and lashed out at my son because of it. He bullied him for a solid 2 years. Made his life a living hell to the point the school called us all in at various times and there was tension between all of us because I requested my son be more protected and I told my ex he needed to do a better job of protecting our son and not let him suffer because he decided to cheat with a married woman. My ex took me to court then because I requested at one of these meetings that my son and Daniel be separated in school, and my ex wanted to sever my education decision abilities because he said I was using the cheating to get what I wanted and to create more distance between the new brothers. The judge did not like hearing what he did, but it was my ex's actions he didn't like. From defending having them in the same class despite the bullying being to the level it was, to saying I shouldn't get a say in the decision, to admitting he left his wife to attend meetings on his behalf at times, and then digging his heels in with the judge. The judge gave me full educational decision making, where I only need to notify X of any change. After the whole bullying ordeal was over, they decided my son needed to help Daniel with schoolwork because Daniel was struggling in school. This included in and out of school and taking up lunchtime if Daniel needed it. My son hated it. His relationship with Daniel has not gotten better because of the bullying, and back in May he told me he wanted to change schools. I weighed the options emotions, and after talking to my ex about the pressure he put on our son despite everything that had happened, and him saying they were brothers and our son would grow to appreciate being forced eventually, I decided to respect what my son wanted, and I moved him from that school to another one in the district, which was possible because of my address and slight changes in zoning in the last 2 years. Ex expressed unhappiness with it, but that was it when I told him. And then our son didn't need to help Daniel as much. Until after Christmas, when both boys were doing school virtually and they asked our son to help Daniel, and one time in an exchange with his dad about it, our son said he thought moving schools would stop him being forced to help Daniel. My ex went nuts and raged at me for moving him to stop him helping Daniel when Daniel is an innocent kid who doesn't deserve that. Told him our son was innocent too and shouldn't have the pressure of 2 lots of work/homework on him, and they need to get Daniel an actual tutor since he's struggling so bad. He called me an R and said it was spite for his cheating and punishing a child. I see it as more doing what's best for my child, which is my priority. Do you think X is right, sir? NTA: in no world is an 11-year-old going to be forced to help his abuser. NTA: I would go back to court for full custody. The fact that your ex placed the burden of academic assistance on an 11-year-old rather than help his son himself speaks volumes. I am a certified teacher with a master's and over a decade of experience. Move your son to a different school. In all honesty, I would temporarily refuse to allow my son to be forced to be near that child. Mental health is incredibly fragile at your son's age. Your child cannot continue to bear a burden that he shouldn't have been saddled with in the first place. Furthermore, your son will begin to experience detrimental effects of bullying, neglect from his father, academic pressures, etc. Unacceptable when it could all be avoided. Best of luck to you and your family. You are a good mom. NTA: please try filing for full custody. Your son is miserable and his childhood is being ruined. If you still don't get full custody, I hope your son would be old enough soon to be allowed to change custody agreement himself. Big typo. NTA: what Daniel doesn't deserve is free tutoring from a kid he bullied for 2 years. Your ex needs a reality check. AITA: for getting someone fired when they made a mistake. I was at a grocery store, shopping for supplies some weeks ago, 5 to 6. My cart included some alcohol, so I gave my driver's license as age proof. Now for context, I speak with an accent from my home country. English isn't even my first language actually. The cashier and I small talked before the carding about the accent, and I mentioned I'm from another country. So when I handed my ID her, she was surprised that it's got a US state on it. And she said it was a fake. I said no it's not, and she claimed that since I'm from another country, why would I have a US driver's license? I thought she was just slightly confused, so said, I'm not a citizen but I've lived in the US long enough, and that's why I have the license. Also I mentioned that my driver's license has a different state on it that where this interaction happened because I even lived there a few years. And she's still suspicious, and said it's not a real license, and she can't sell me the alcohol or anything else in the cart. I said that I could just buy my basics, and leave the alcohol, and needs to confiscate the license. I was annoyed at this point, and said listen it's not a fake, if you want I can show you a picture of my passport to check my name and DOB and know this isn't a fake ID. Then will you give me back my ID, let me buy my stuff, and let me get the hell out of a public store during the pandemic? At this point she loses her temper and says wow you're really full of stories and excuses huh. This isn't my first day on the job, I know a fake when I see one. You aren't getting this back, and grabbed a pair of scissors and cut the card up. At this point I'm furious, my card wasn't a fake, and I was happy to prove it, but now I'm stuck without a convenient ID document, need to go to the place, if it's even open, and sit in a crowd during a pandemic to get a new one, and I need to start carrying my passport with me everywhere until it's issued so I have an ID on me. So I demanded the manager, created a big deal out of her behavior. I didn't yell, but I was absolutely furious and made it clear how much of a problem, in terms of time, safety and money, she has created for me, and stormed off. and received a gift card for my trouble. I didn't see her the next few times I went in, but saw someone new. Some polite questioning revealed that she was fired even though it was her first offense, because the wasn't pleased that instead of escalating to the manager, the cashier cut up some customer's ID willy-nilly. The new guy didn't know I was the customer. And now I'm torn. She was trying to just do her job, and I didn't expect her to be fired. And during a pandemic where everyone is struggling, no less. Of course, I feel like I was justified in making a big stink, but I'm sure an entitled person feels the same when they make a big stink about a store not honoring an expired coupon. So tell me folks, AITA? Exclamation mark. NTA. This cashier totally failed in following store policy. Not only did she refuse to sell your alcohol, but anything else in your basket. The cashier well deserved her firing, for destroying a customer's property, much less a legal ID. NTA. Some things are worth being fired over, even if it's a first strike. Harassing a customer and destroying their government-issued ID in a fit of xenophobic rage is one of those things. Emphasis, xenophobic. Cashier deserved everything they got. NTA. She wasn't doing her job. It is her prerogative to refuse service to you, if she thinks the ID is fake. But even if she did think the ID was fake, she should have returned the card to you. It most definitely is not her job to cut up cards because she thinks they're fake. Because, really, she has no equipment or training to ascertain someone's ID is fake. Just her best guess. Your response was completely appropriate. She was out of line and the management responded appropriately. NTA. This was absurd behavior for a perfectly reasonable explanation. Firing is completely justified. Hopefully the store pays for you to get a new license. There's no store that makes it a policy of cutting up drivers' licenses and refusing the sale of all items in a cart instead of just the booze.